Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hey there! Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast.
Hi, I'm Jennifer McCarville.
And I'm Nicole Dugan. And today we are talking about process art versus product art.
Yes.
And art in general in the early childhood years.
Yes, we sure are.
Yes. So let's dive right in.
Okay. So we do a lot of art with the children at our school. We actually also opened the Wildflower, a process art studio for children. And so the main focus for children really of all ages, but especially the youngest children, I would say first grade and younger for sure, should be about the experience of creating. And so art plays a very valuable role in education and in just creating and unfolding who we are as people. And so we want children to be able to create from their own exploration, their own needs, and for the experiences that are so rich, that build sensory systems and language, and so much brain structure is built when we experience creating artfully.
Okay, so let's start with what is process art?
Okay, so process art is an experience children have, usually including what we consider traditional art mediums: paint, pastels, crayons, collage, sculptures, those kinds of things, with open-ended materials and open-ended experiences. In other words, they have no specific desired outcome. You prepare the materials and you present them, and then the children are able to create. So that's the process. It's all about the doing and not about today you're going to draw a penguin. Today you're going to draw a pumpkin. Today you're going to draw the Statue of Liberty. Those things would be done with older children who have developed that strong ability for pictorial representation of things, which young children are still, that's still unfolding for them, and it doesn't serve them well. What they need to do is get in there and mix it up and feel it and see cause and effect and create. And they often, and when you're doing process art right, the children often don't even care about the outcome. They will probably, many of them won't ever need to pick that picture up, won't ever need to see it again, really. But we send them home because parents like to see them and such. And some of the children, it does really matter, and it depends on their personalities and their temperaments, of course. And so we do always send that work home. But when it's true process art and the children are really in that stage, you can tell because it doesn't even matter. We'll hang easel paintings, etc., outside in our courtyards, and the children will walk right past them often. And the parents are stopping to say, wait, is this one yours? Is this one yours? And they're like, I don't know, And we do, of course, help them write their names on the art if they want us to. But yeah, so it means enjoying the experience of creating.
Okay, and so process art doesn't include any teacher examples.
Zero teacher examples. So let's talk about that a minute, because a lot of times when I'm working with teachers, training teachers, etc., teachers will say, well, I just cut out all the pieces and I let them put them wherever they want. That's not process art, because you're cutting out all the pieces of the jack-o'-lantern and you're putting them on the table, and the children's only experience engagement with that is glue the pieces that the grown-up cut out or that we bought somewhere and put them on the thing where they go. And so that is about the product, because you're saying, today we're going to make jack-o'-lanterns. So that's not process art.
And another example of not process art would be to have orange paper and green paper and made in circle-ish shapes, or an example of pumpkins on a piece of paper. But they can make whatever pumpkin or shape they want, but that's not process art.
No,
with that end goal in mind of making a pumpkin.
Yeah. If the teacher has in mind, it's going to look like blank, you need to stop and pivot. That is not process art. We never cut shapes for the children. We actually, let me take that back. We will cut what are geometry shapes. We call them math shapes. So we might cut triangles and circles and etc. But or we'll also do organic shapes because we want to throw that in there from time to time. And an organic shape is just it's got a wiggle around it. It's got a shape we don't traditionally look at. The paper is usually rectangular, square. So we might cut the edges and make them soft, etc. But it's not a circle. So we'll do organic shapes, math shapes, and have those as options for the children, or maybe sprinkled out on the table as they're making collages, but that's it. We are never gonna cut out the shape of a heart or a butterfly. And we're never going to take what they made. This is another thing that I know some educators struggle with is the children will do watercolor on coffee filters and the teachers will pinch them in the middle and put a clothespin and add pipe cleaners for antenna and they've made butterflies. But the children made them. No, the children made art on the coffee filter. You changed what they made into a butterfly. And so that is not a process. That is not a process experience. That is a product experience. So even though in process art, we often see as the adult perspective, what we perceive to be a really beautiful product, it's really about the doing. It's not about the outcome.
Okay, so let's give examples of what product art invitation might look like at our school.
A product art?
Nope, not product, process.
A process art invitation would look like shades of paint in paint pots on the middle of the table with a couple of different pieces of paper that the children could choose from to sit down and paint. We might also have some glitter on the table, or that we also have lots of materials the children can see and access. So if they wanted to add pipe cleaners or yarn or what have you, we have paste pots. Definitely prefer paste over glue because especially the younger children, they can brush that on and you don't have that problem. So many people with squeeze bottles. And squeezing glue is so, so important. But if you are not able to let the children do that to their heart's content, then don't offer it. Find an alternative. You can put liquid glue on a sponge and put it in a container, and they can dab what they want to glue onto that sponge and then put it on their paper. You can put it in a container with a brush. It's a little runny, so there's that. But if they're not able to squeeze to their heart's content, then avoid that at all costs.
And you mean if there is a bottle of squeeze glue out, there are children that will have the need of just squeezing the whole bottle out.
Yeah.
And that has to be okay.
It has to be okay. Has to be okay. And you're going to see them grow through that. That's something that they're definitely growing through usually as they go into kindergarten. But we recommend and encourage educators and parents to give children opportunities to use squeeze glue like crazy. We'll do things like a really thick piece of cardboard or a board that the children can make a collaborative with, and it's a glue structure. And they have all kinds of things in baskets and containers they can choose from, and the glue's out there and the children can just squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it. And that's the way they learn how to regulate that. They're also strengthening their hands in that process. It's such a great way to develop hand strength, eye-hand coordination, and creativity. I want this to go there. I want that to go there. Change the color of the glue. Add some coloring in the glue and shake it up so that they can do that. You can also, I would say, about 2/3 glue and water to make it a little thinner. Of course, it's going to be thinner, so you have to take that into account. But creating and being deep in those experiences creates brain development that we really can't even fathom. There's stuff that we just aren't always going to know, but we have to trust that when the children are deeply engaged and the activities and experiences match their development, that they are doing what they need to do to grow and learn. So, I mean that we would never tell them to stop squeezing glue. Just a dot, not a lot, is really ridiculous. You've heard teachers say that.
Yes.
No, it's I need a lot, I need a lot, I need a lot. Children have to use a lot before they use a little. And to learn self-regulation, then giving them the opportunity to use a lot first is the key to that.
Right. Right. Okay, give us another example of process art.
Well, another example of process art well, it really is anything where materials are out on the table and children can create. So it could be a structure. It could be that they have, and you control the environment. So if they're going to get to make a sculpture with wooden pieces and you have a collection of smallish wooden pieces, the size of the base you provide is going to automatically give your children some boundaries. And so you would do a base that seems reasonable and put out the glue. Make sure you're using wood glue. You want their experiences to always be successful. Now, they also we all learn from the mistakes and the problems and the challenges. So I don't mean that won't happen, but when you're planning it, you definitely want to think, oh, this is wood. If we can use wood glue, let's use wood glue. We know it's going to be more successful, and that way we're not setting them up for frustration all the time, especially when they're in a group. When they're at home, and some people have a lot of children, so that's a group right at home, isn't it? But if you have a smaller group of children, it's easier to be there and navigate alongside them. But we also want to create spaces where we don't have to be there alongside them. So we want to eliminate as much of that challenge as possible. So think through the environment. I think one of the big keys of process art is covering the table with a canvas, covering the floor with a canvas if you need to, making it accessible for the children to create. We don't use the word mess here. I always say that's a 4-letter word. It's not messy, it's work, which is also a 4-letter word, but it's a good 4-letter word. But you want to set the environment up for the children to jump in. So another example of process art, we talked about collage and sculpture, any kind of painting at the easel, painting anywhere should be about the process. You can put different things for them to paint with. So you can change up their experience and grow their brains and give them new obstacles. Another thing at the easel that we enjoy doing is after they've had plenty of time to paint at the easel freely, we'll cut a circle out of the center of it and see what they do with that abstract space, or tape a stick to it, and they'll walk in and be like, oh, what do I do with that? Like, oh, I wonder, and just give them time to think about it and look at it, and they may come back and paint once they've had time to think about that, or maybe they just jump right in and whatever they do is great. So things like that are not product, but they're still stretching and growing the minds, but still allowing them to be so creative.
And tell us about what's happening in the brain during those art experiences.
So, well, in the brain, so many things can be happening. One is problem solving. A lot of rich problem solving is taking place. It also creates a space for the children to process emotions. So as the children are working, they may be experiencing joyful emotions, and that's reflected in their painting or their work and whatever they're doing. But it also really gives children an outlet for maybe emotional upset, and it's naturally soothing. So as they're participating in these processes and experiences, it's therapeutic. I mean, it's truly therapeutic for their souls and their hearts to get lost in what they're creating. And often what they're doing is telling a story. And that's one of the reasons that when we talk to children about their art, we don't put our perception of what they've done on their experience. So, and that takes a lot of practice. It can be a really tricky thing to do. And what I mean by that is we never judge their work. We never say, it's so pretty. Because number one, we want children to create for the sake of creating. Number two, we don't want them to rely on our opinions to know that what they've done is valuable. We want them from a very young age to be developing the ability to know that they're happy with it. And we say that to the children, children aren't born saying, do you like it? Do you like it? Do you like it? Someone along the way, and we just all do it. I do it. We just do it. We say, oh, it's so pretty. I love it. And that very quickly, in just a short amount of time, turns into the child always wanting you to like it and love it and think it's good. And that's not fair to their creative spirit or their self-esteem. It's not detrimental. Nobody panic. I mean, you do it a little bit and we're going to pivot. Know better, do better, right? But It's not going to destroy them by any stretch, but we definitely want to be cognizant of that. So instead of that, we will say, we'll either remark about the work itself. We'll say, wow, you spent a lot of time over there creating that sculpture. Tell me what your favorite part was, or what were you thinking when you made that? Or simply tell me about it. And if they're pushing for you to give them approval, our suggestion is you say, how do you feel about it? Are you happy with it? And they'll think about that, and they'll start to really reflect on their work. And most often they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say not yet, and they'll go back and work some more. And that is a beautiful milestone right there, where they are reflecting on their work. And the experience, we say the experience is the best teacher, the experience is the only teacher, but the experience can only be the best teacher and the only teacher with space for reflection. So yes, the experience is the best and the best teacher, right, to get to do it. But in addition to that, you have to have time to think about it. So when you say to a child, are you happy with it? And they actually say, no, I think I need more blue. Or actually, I'm going to put some more pom-poms on it. Great, go back. And we'll also say to the children, let's save your work right here on the drying rack. And then if you want to add something to it later, it'll be here waiting for you. And that gives them that opportunity to revisit work, which is something that we have included in the environment and been very intentional about. Going back and adding to it again, trying it a different way. Because those experiences bring reflection. So if they're going to, paint sticks, we're going to give them 3 or 4 different ways to do that. We're going to put sticks on the table with paintbrushes. We're going to add things that you can glue to them in another week or so. We're going to stick one on a piece of paper. We're going to find different ways to make them stand up so that when they walk into that invitation, it looks different, but they're painting sticks every time. And then when they approach that a second, a third, a fourth time in a new way, that's the reflection on the experience that's really bringing the learning.
Right. And giving them time to reflect. It might be at home. So if you just have those invitations out one time,
right,
then they're not revisiting it.
Oh my goodness, I know. And that was something so consistently expected of me as an educator in the early years, that on Tuesday you do this art experience, and they were more craft than art, and they were more teacher driven. On Tuesday you do this, on Wednesday you do that, on Thursday you do that, on Friday you do that, and you do and you're done. That's a product. We're going to make this. And there is a place for that, but it's with children who are much older. And we can talk about that. I know we're going to, but it's when you're just doing it once, you're not nurturing deep learning. And so we do things again and again and again. I tell the teachers here, and I tell teachers when I do trainings and workshops, you put it out for a week, and when no child has touched it for 2 days, then you scaffold it. You add something different to it. You change the presentation, you alter it a little bit, and see if the children come back and revisit. We're fortunate enough that we have space where we can have tables, that things are there for long periods of time. And I used to feel like you really needed a big space to be able to do that, but I know now that's not true. You can create that space wherever, because when children have the right materials in the classroom or in the home, they are open-ended, they are engaging, they can be changed by the child. You don't have to change it all.
Right.
It's okay and important to leave it. Kind of think about it in the same way you think about tricycles or swings or blocks. We don't get rid of those after one experience or 2 experiences.
Right.
So leave that experience out for them to revisit. And again, a reminder that it takes a long time to become deeply engaged in learning and building new neural pathways. So when we do a one and done mentality for art, for creating, we're not doing what children need. It's that simple.
You always say, at what cost?
Yeah.
And so product art with the examples and everyone's creating the same thing and one and done, what cost could product art be to our children?
Well, for one thing, it stifles their creativity. The biggest thing, of course, we're going to say is self-confidence and that ability to initiate and take a risk, etc. It sets them up immediately for comparison. I'm not doing it like that. What's wrong with me? I want it to look like that and I can't. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm no good at this. I don't like this. So many negative feelings and negative things we're telling them about themselves. And of course, it's unintentional. But I'll give you a little anecdote that I've shared before. We have art teachers in our school, in some of the classrooms, people who just focus specifically on the art experiences for the children. And of course, we have our art studio. But we, in our previous location, had a room that was the art room for the preschoolers. And we had an amazing teacher who's still with us. And we've reflected on this many times, because here, one of the best things we can do for children is acknowledge that we don't have all the answers and we're learning from them. We're always learning from the children, right? But you have to have a real open mind and a humility about you, that you don't have to push up against that. And I know because I'm the grown-up. I know because I'm older than you. That's not usually true. I'll even say it's not usually true, but it's often not true and usually not true. Anyway, this art teacher, the children were doing a still life, I think it was, and inspired by Picasso. And the thought was that the teacher would kind of explain to them, you're going to paint 5 flowers. And so she had a paper on the wall, and she painted 5 circles. She went real simple, just thought, I'm just going to kind of show them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, we're looking at this still life. There are 5. There are these colors. And every single child painted what she painted, or a version of what she painted in that small group. And at the end of the day, she only did it one time. At the end of the day, she was so shocked that she did it. And really, it was so affirming for all of us, the value and importance of never making a model for a child, and realizing what a model is. You sit beside them and you draw. You're making a model. You're saying, this is how you draw a house. So you say, oh, you're going to put 5 on your paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to show them you're making a model. I think a lot of people think the only model is showing them the finished product and having that as the example of what we're making. And that's not the only model. So we've just developed this deep awareness, and we're so reflective in our practices. And that's the learning for us too. And it benefits children so beautifully. But I think the biggest thing that we risk when we have them all do the same thing is self-esteem. I can't do it like them. I'm just not there yet developmentally, and I'm no good at this. And those are huge things. We also take away the joy of creating. And it is so, we know arts in school, arts in education, art, it's so important. We know that. And we're talking about all kinds of art, right? We're talking about not only these traditional materials in creating art, such as paint and collage, etc. We're talking about dance and music and all the different ways. Building is art. So these things are so valuable. They're valuable simply for the experience. And when we know they're that valuable simply for the experience, what we're saying is it's a really complex experience that's so beneficial for us as human beings and as learners.
Yeah. So there is a time and a place for product art.
Okay.
Older kids.
Older kids. Yes.
Right? Is there a time and place for product art?
Well, I think that it's not necessarily product art. I think there's a time and place for drawing lessons.
Okay.
I think there's a time and place there, to learn different techniques, shading and things like that, all coming under drawing. I think there's a time and place to learn to make a pinch pot out of clay. Now, those things we call handwork, because handwork is a little different than art. And we do handwork with our youngest learners here too, but they make pinch pots. So there are strategies and techniques to create clay pots that we want to learn so you can create a clay pot. Now, your pots are all going to look different, and then you're going to be able to paint them if you want to, etc. But you're learning the technique for creating that particular kind of work that particular kind of art. We call them art now, crafts, but we call them handwork. And for us, kind of the difference is handwork is taking materials such as fabrics and yarn and clay and creating something useful that didn't exist before. Now, those things can be beautiful. I mean, they can be works of art, but we want them to learn the techniques for creating basket weaving. There are certain things you need to learn to weave a basket. The children, starting very young, make pom-poms. Well, there's certain tips and strategies and techniques for creating pom-poms from yarn. So I think that's more learning as they get older, the strategies, the tools, the techniques for accomplishing different things. It's still not, we're all going to make this basket.
Okay.
Necessarily, right? So, for example, our oldest children recently visited a potter in the area, and they learned how to hand build on a tile, a combination of carving and hand building. So they learned the techniques, the importance of not digging too deeply, or your tile could break apart in the firing process. If you make it too thick, that the weight can cause it to bend. So you're learning the different important pieces of creating that kind of art, but all of their tiles looked very different.
Right.
So you might learn how to create mosaics with glass, but we're not going to say, we're all going to create a mosaic that looks like a Christmas tree.
Right.
So those are some variations in how we approach that. There could be a time where they're going to do a specific thing as an entry level experience, but we do know that definitely says, I know how to make this and I don't know how to make anything else. So we're just real cautious about that. Overly cautious, maybe, but I don't know how you could be overly considerate of a child's creative process or their skills or their ability to take a technique and do something different. I from professional observation and research, mostly from genuine experiences, watching children and working with children, telling them exactly how to do something before they have the opportunity to express it freely robs them of being creative to the extent that they could be. So when you get to be about 7 years old and you're going into direct instruction with academic learning, there are ways you write the numeral 3. There's a way you do that. There's a proper way to do that. There are ways that you pronounce letters. There are proper ways to do that. And how you identify blends and those things, you don't just get to say, well, I want it to make this sound. Like, well, no, actually, there is a way that happens. So when you get into that kind of learning, that, of course, is very different. But these other kinds of learning are the place for that creative outlet and exploration and experience. And I don't think we can ever be too respectful of that.
I think you're right. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how to take process art and display it or offer an art show for the artists and their parents. But we can't wait to hear your questions, comments, thoughts about process art and how you can be doing it at home or in your classroom. So leave a comment below if you have any questions about that or tips or tricks.
Yeah.
But that ends this episode about process art versus product art. What's our tenet? Create is one of our 14 tenets at savechildhood.org. Join the movement, like and subscribe, share, follow us on social media.
Awesome. All those things. Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.